I was arrested on my own porch. That is the naked, unvarnished truth. In the dead of a Tuesday night, I stood bathed in the violent, rhythmic strobe of blue and red police cruisers, the sheer absurdity of the moment hitting me like a physical blow. I was being accused of criminal trespassing on a cabin my family has owned for 3 generations. Standing on the gravel below, Brenda, the self-proclaimed empress of the Lakeview Preservation Society, laughed in a pitch that could shatter glass. "Arrest him!" she shrieked, her face a mask of righteous, unearned triumph. "He's a squatter, a vandal, I am the law here." I didn't say a word, I just watched her. She had no idea that while she was weaponizing the local sheriff's department, I was holding a legal tactical nuke, ready to topple her entire kingdom of lies. The deep woods of Silver Lake usually settle into a heavy, comfortable silence once the sun dips below the horizon. It's a place that smells of ancient pine needles and damp earth, the kind of absolute peace my grandfather, George Franklin, secured for pennies on the dollar back in 1964. I was standing on the weathered redwood deck he built with his own 2 hands, flipping a thick ribeye over white-hot charcoal. The lake had turned into a sheet of black glass, reflecting the first stars. The world was, for a fleeting moment, perfect. The beer in my hand was ice cold, the fire was hot, and the city stress I'd left 4 hours ago was evaporating into the mountain air. My grandfather's cabin is a humble structure of cedar and stone that blends into the shadows. It is a stark, intentional contradiction to the monstrosity occupying Lot 1A, just 200 yards away. That structure, Brenda's estate, is a towering fortress of glass, steel, and sharp angles. It looks less like a home and more like an Apple store that got lost in the wilderness. Brenda's idea of nature appreciation involves industrial floodlights because apparently she's afraid of the dark. Tonight, her house was blazing like a lighthouse, cutting through the natural beauty of the timberline. I turned my back on her fortress, focusing on my stake. I was the sole beneficiary of the George Franklin Family Trust, and I intended to enjoy my inheritance in peace. Then the serenity was violently canceled. Blue and red strobe lights erupted at the bottom of my long gravel driveway. The lights bounced violently off the ancient tree trunks, blinding me. Then came the distinct, heavy crunch of police cruisers braking hard on a surface meant for pickup trucks, not pursuit vehicles. I didn't drop my tongs, I didn't run. Panic is the reaction of the guilty, and I knew exactly where I was standing. I also knew that running would give them a reason to unholster the weapons I could already see glinting on their hips. 2 uniformed officers stepped out with the tense, jerky rhythm of men expecting a fight. One of them, a younger deputy with a buzz cut so fresh it looked painful, shone a high-intensity tactical flashlight directly into my retinas. The beam was designed to disorient. It worked. "Step away from the fire," he shouted over the hum of the engines. "Keep your hands visible now." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my beer, set it on the railing, and raised my empty hands. The stainless steel tongs dangled from my right index finger like some bizarre, low-budget weapon. I squinted through the glare, keeping my voice level, devoid of the adrenaline they were fishing for. "What seems to be the problem, officer?" The older officer stepped forward, keeping a tactical distance. "We received a priority call regarding an active burglary and criminal trespassing in progress. Reporting party says a vagrant pried the gate open and is squatting on private property." I almost laughed, I really did, but mocking law enforcement in the dark is a poor survival strategy. "That's interesting," I said. "Considering I used a brass key to open that gate, the only thing I'm breaking into is a 12-pack of domestic lager." Before the officer could respond, a shrill voice cut through the night like a bandsaw hitting a rusty nail. "That's him, that's the squatter." Brenda marched into the light. She was pointing a manicured finger at my chest, her face twisted. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that looked utterly ridiculous in the mud. "I am Brenda Sterling, president of the Lakeview Preservation Society. I demand you arrest this vandal immediately before he lowers our property values any further." The younger officer looked at my faded gray t-shirt and cargo shorts, then at Brenda's expensive jewelry and authoritarian posture. I could see the bias forming in his mind in real time. To them, I looked like a drifter. She looked like a taxpayer. I didn't argue, I didn't scream about my grandfather's military service. Verbal arguments are for people who don't have documentation. I looked the older officer dead in the eye, ignoring the flashlight beam, and spoke with the flat, bored tone of a man who reads contracts for a living. Officer, I said, my voice cutting through Brenda's heavy breathing. My wallet is on the patio table directly to the left of the grill. Inside, you'll find my driver's license. I'd like you to take it, call your dispatch, and ask them to run the parcel ID for this specific plot of land. The officer hesitated. Brenda scoffed loudly. Don't listen to him, he probably stole that wallet. This land has been abandoned for years. The HOA has jurisdiction over all unsecured lots for the purpose of neighborhood security. I repeated my request slightly louder but still without a hint of anger. The parcel ID is 429. Run the plate on my truck while you're at it. Cross-reference it with the deed recorded in the county database. I'll wait. The older cop signaled his partner to watch me. He picked up my wallet with a gloved hand and retreated to his cruiser. The next 3 minutes were an exercise in excruciating patience. Brenda stood at the bottom of the porch stairs, smirking. She looked at me with a mixture of disgust and pity, muttering about how she had friends in the zoning office and would have this eyesore bulldozed by the end of the month. I just flipped my steak. You might want to check the surveyor's map, Brenda, I said casually. You're technically standing on my driveway. She rolled her eyes. I am the law on this lake, you delusional little man. I didn't respond. I just waited for the radio in the cruiser to crackle with the objective digital truth. When the older officer stepped back out of his car, his entire demeanor had transformed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by the awkward, stiff posture of a man who realizes he has been weaponized by a liar. He walked past Brenda, ignoring her demand for an update, and handed me my wallet. I apologize for the disturbance, sir, he said, his voice heavy with newfound respect. Dispatch confirmed the records. This property is owned by the George Franklin Family Trust. You are the authorized trustee. You are on your own land. Brenda's jaw dropped so hard I thought it might unhinge. There must be a mistake, my records show. The officer turned on her. His voice was sharp now, devoid of the deference he'd shown her earlier. Ma'am, filing a false police report is a criminal offense. If you call 911 for a civil dispute again, I will personally cite you for misuse of emergency services. We're done here. As the cruisers backed down the driveway and the red and blue lights died, the night returned to its natural darkness. But the silence was heavy now. Brenda stood there, illuminated only by the orange glow of my grill. She didn't look ashamed, she looked furious. She took a step closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. You might have won this round because of a clerical error, she hissed. But I control this lake, the permits, the people, everything. You will regret the attitude you showed me yesterday. Yesterday, I asked, feigning ignorance as I sliced into my steak. You know what I mean, she spat. Nobody says no to me. She turned on her heel and marched into the darkness, her heels clicking angrily on the stones. I watched her go, taking a bite of the ribeye, perfectly medium rare. Brenda thought tonight was the beginning of the war. She was wrong. The war had actually started 48 hours earlier, the moment I made the mistake of opening my front door to her. To understand why a woman in a designer pantsuit would call the police on a man grilling a steak, we have to rewind. It was a sun-drenched Tuesday afternoon. I had just arrived, my beat-up pickup truck loaded with supplies for a month of solitude. I was hauling a cooler out of the truck bed when I heard the crunch of tires. A pristine pearl-white Mercedes SUV idled at the bottom of my driveway. It was spotless, a stark contrast to my mud-splattered Ford. Out stepped Brenda. I didn't know her name then, but I knew the type. She was dressed for a boardroom, wearing oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than my first car. She scanned my cabin with a look of critical appraisal, her lips pursed as if she'd just bitten a lemon. Good afternoon, she called out, her voice pitched in that artificial, sugary tone realtors use to sell houses with mold problems. She stopped 10 feet away, maintaining a hygienic distance from my workman aesthetic. I noticed you pulling in. We don't get many service vehicles up this private road. Are you lost? This area is strictly residential. I blinked, processing the insult. She thought I was a contractor. I smiled politely. I'm not lost, I'm staying here, just opening the place up. Her smile glitched for a fraction of a second. Oh, I see, you must be a relative of the previous owner. We were all wondering when someone would come to deal with this. She gestured vaguely at my cabin as if shooing away a bad smell. I am Brenda Sterling. I own the estate on the adjacent lot. I also happen to be the president of the Lakeview Preservation Society, our local homeowners association. She said homeowners association with the same reverence a priest might use for the Eucharist. She waited for me to be impressed. When I just took a sip of water from my canteen, she stepped closer, invading my personal space with the scent of expensive perfume and aggressive entitlement. She flipped open a heavy leather binder. Since you're new, I wanted to get your paperwork sorted. We've worked very hard to elevate the standards here. We're attracting a certain caliber of resident. We can't have rusted vehicles and overgrown lawns dragging down the equity of people who have invested millions. I took the binder. I knew for a fact my grandfather bought this land as a freehold property in the 60s. Unless I'd signed a contract in my sleep, there was no HOA. I looked at the membership agreement. It was a masterpiece of absurdity. Clause 1, a $2,000 initiation fee, payable immediately. Clause 2, a $200 monthly maintenance fee paid to C Holdings LLC. Rule 4, no pickup trucks allowed in driveways overnight, effectively a ban on my vehicle. Rule 9, all landscaping must be performed exclusively by Greenleaf Landscaping Services. I looked up Greenleaf Landscaping. Let me guess, is that a local company? It's a preferred vendor, she said quickly, her eyes darting away. They know our specific aesthetic standards. It saves residents the hassle. We just add the fee to your monthly dues. I closed the binder with a sharp snap. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Brenda. I won't be signing this. The silence was brittle. Brenda stared at me as if I'd spoken a dead language. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. I don't think you understand. This isn't optional. This is a covenant. It's how we ensure the riffraff doesn't ruin the atmosphere. If you can't afford the fee, we can work out a payment plan, provided you move that truck immediately. It's not about the money, I said, leaning against my porch railing. It's about the law. I've checked the county records. This property is a freehold. Your HOA might apply to the new subdivisions down the road, but it has zero jurisdiction over this lot. I'm not joining, I'm not paying, and I'm definitely not hearing your gardener. Brenda's face underwent a terrifying transformation. The veneer of the welcoming neighbor dissolved, revealing the cold, hard steel beneath. She stepped onto my porch, pointing that finger. "Listen to me, you arrogant little man," she hissed. "I have spent 2 years curating this community. I have friends in the sheriff's department. I have friends in the clerk's office. You are either part of the solution or you are a problem, and I know how to deal with problems." "Are you threatening me?" I asked, crossing my arms. "I am educating you," she spat. "If you refuse to join, you will find life out here becomes very difficult. You will be watched, you will receive citations, and eventually you will leave. They always leave." She thrust the binder at me one last time. "Sign it, move the truck, or I promise you this will be the most expensive vacation you've ever taken." I didn't take the binder, I didn't shout, I just gave her a look of utter boredom. "Get off my porch, Brenda, and take your imaginary club rules with you. You're trespassing." I stepped inside and slammed the heavy oak door. I heard her scream something incoherent about regretting this before her Mercedes roared away. That was 48 hours ago. Now, standing in the dark after the police had left, I realized Brenda wasn't going to stop. She had tried to have me arrested. She had lied to the state. She was playing for keeps. But Brenda had made one fatal mistake. She assumed I was just some guy who inherited a shack. She didn't realize that in my city life, I'm a forensic auditor for the state tax board. And when she mentioned C Holdings LLC and Greenleaf Landscaping, a very specific set of bells started ringing in my head. The next morning, I didn't go fishing. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a satellite hotspot. It took me 4 hours to find the connection. C Holdings LLC, the company collecting the HOA administrative fees, was registered to a shell company in Delaware. The registered agent, Brenda Sterling's brother-in-law. Greenleaf Landscaping, owned by a holding company whose primary shareholder was Brenda Sterling herself. She wasn't just a bossy neighbor, she was running a sophisticated racketeering scheme. She was forcing residents into an HOA that, in many cases, didn't legally exist for their older lots, then funneling their dues and fines into businesses she controlled. I spent the rest of the week gathering declarations from other neighbors, older folks who had lived on the lake for decades and had been bullied into paying Brenda protection money to avoid her legal threats and police harassment. The climax didn't happen on the porch, it happened Friday morning at the town hall. I had called a community standards meeting, using a loophole in the very bylaws Brenda had handed me. Brenda arrived late, looking radiant in a white blazer, flanked by two other board members who looked like they'd been lobotomized. "This meeting is unauthorized," Brenda announced, taking her seat at the head of the table. She looked at me with a smirk. "I see you're still here. I assume you've come to turn in your signed paperwork and an apology." The room was packed with 40 neighbors, all whispering. I stood up, holding a manila folder. "Actually, Brenda, I'm here to discuss the audit." Her smirk faltered. "The what?" "I took the liberty of running the corporate filings for Greenleaf Landscaping and Sea Holdings," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet hall. "It seems you've been using HOA funds to pay for services that are actually just kickbacks to yourself. And more importantly, I've pulled the original land grants for the 32 properties on the North Shore." I walked to the front and laid a map on the table. "Brenda, you told the police I was trespassing because this lot was under HOA jurisdiction. But here's the kicker. According to the 1982 County Annexation Act, this entire section of the lake was never legally incorporated into your association. You've been collecting dues from 16 families who don't even belong to your club." The room erupted. Brenda's face went from white to a sickly shade of purple. "That's a lie," she screamed, slamming her fist on the table. "I am the president, I have the authority."